Howdy pals, welcome back to my channel. My name is Shelby and today I'm going to be talking to you about my most anticipated releases for the first half of 2023. These titles are going to be for the first half of the year because that's pretty much all that's like fully been announced so far. These are the ones we really have dates for and we have covers for them. So super exciting. I'm really excited to share all these with you today and let's get into it. These are in order of when they're coming out. I'd say I'm like equally looking forward to all of these, so they're not in like order of most anticipated to least anticipated. I'm just gonna organize them by date because they all sound really great. I say that, but we're gonna start off with Spare by Prince Harry, which is a title that I cannot wait to get my hands on. Let me like adjust the framing a little bit so like I can put the book in there, you know? That'll do. All of the covers are gonna have to be digital because obviously I don't have the books yet. So there we go. We've situated Spare by Prince Harry. I am an absolute royal stan. I follow British royalty sometimes more than I follow like American and traditional pop culture. And more than anything, I'm a Harry and Meghan apologist. I stan. I love them. This book comes out January 10th and I already have it pre-ordered. I can't wait to read the hell out of this. As soon as it shows up on my doorstep, it's open. My eyes are scanning those pages. I can't wait. What I really think this book is going to be an autobiographical account of Harry's life as a member of the royal family. Based on the synopsis, it really looks like it's going to center around the passing of his mother and kind of what his life as both a grieving son and a member of the royal family kind of looked like at that time, and then how that likely affected his future role as the prince. What is he? Duke of Sussex, I believe is, yes, Duke and Duchess of Sussex. This is gonna be particularly fascinating because it's really the first time, or one of the first times, we're gonna see things from Harry's perspective and hear things from Harry's perspective. We got a bit of that in the Harry and Meghan documentary, which was delightful, fantastic, never been done before. But it will be interesting to kind of hear more about Harry's side of things and fully get more into maybe his life rather than just his relationship with Meghan, learn more about his life as a royal and kind of his upbringing and obviously the passing of his mother. All of my January reading plans will be set aside the second this shows up on my doorstep, and I can't wait. Like I said about 10 times in this little debriefing synopsis, whatever you want to call this little section. Then publishing on January 31st, we have Sorry Bro by Taylene Voskouni. I believe that's how you pronounce the author's last name. I have already read this, but I figured I'd toss it in here to share the love. This follows Nar after the event of a failed proposal. Basically, her boyfriend proposes to her and she rejects him, saying that they're not really fit for each other, and she doesn't realize that until he's down on one knee and realizes that their lives aren't suited for one another. So in the pursuit of someone who shares her same idea of love, Nar's mom attempts to get her more involved with her Armenian culture and maybe meet an Armenian man in the process. Through attending these events, Nar meets Arabuni. There's basically an immediate attraction between these two characters. This book is a fun-filled story of self-discovery. I said in my review of this that this book felt so real and authentic to not only the characters, but just to like people in real life. I feel like a lot of the time when I'm reading romance books, I'm like, these don't feel like real people. They're very clearly fictional characters on a page. But I felt like Nar and Arabuni, Nar more specifically, like she could have been a real person that I knew, and I was just like reading her autobiography. Everything in this felt so real and authentic, and it was just beautifully done. I really enjoyed this. Not to mention, I thoroughly enjoyed the sprinkling of Armenian culture throughout. It was super adorable to see, and how that really impacted Nar's growth and character development throughout the book. Back to another one that I haven't read yet. Radiant Sin is the 4th full-length novel in the Dark Olympus series by Katie Robert, and this one publishes on February 7th. So all of these books are retellings of the gods and goddesses of Olympus, dealing primarily with the 13, but then there's always some romantic interest involved. Sometimes they're not in the 13. And this one is about Apollo and Cassandra. Basically, Apollo asks Cassandra to be his +1 at a party, and she reluctantly agrees on the condition that after the party, Apollo will help Cassandra and her sister free Olympus. I have read every other book in this series thus far, and Wicked Beauty has been my favorite. I am always looking for more of this series. I just can't get enough of it for some reason. I think I'm really in love with like Katie Roberts' writing and storytelling. It's always super fun. These books do lean to the smuttier side of romance, so if like sex on the page, sometimes a little bit more graphic in its nature, is not necessarily your thing, I wouldn't be checking this series or frankly Katie Robert out as an author. But if this is your thing, it's not the most like smutty thing I've ever heard of in my entire life, but they do have, you know, more than one on the page sex scene, and listen, they're good, okay? Book Talk was right about this one. This whole series, I've enjoyed it. Stoneheart, which is part of this whole series, it's a little novella that takes place for Neon Gods, was one of my favorite books of 2022. So obviously I'm gonna wanna check this one out. Plus One is the third book in the Brush with Love. I believe it's a trilogy by Maisie Eddings. Have I only read the first one? Yes. Is the third one still on my most anticipated of 2023? Also yes. This book is about childhood enemies to lovers, and it promises fake dating and forced proximity as Indra and Jude agree to be each other's fake date for a wedding. And each of them obviously has their own reason with following through on this plan. And I am typically not a big fan of fake dating. It can either be really hit or miss for me, and sometimes it tends to lean a little bit more miss because it just feels a little non-realistic, unbelievable, whatever you choose to categorize it as. However, I do love a good wedding plot, so I'm hoping that this one is as successful as I'm expecting it to be. I just have to get to Lizzie Blake first. I saw Never Vacation with Your Ex in one of the author's TikToks, and from the moment I saw that TikTok, I added that shit to my TBR and I said, I will be buying this the second it comes out. Y'all already know that I eat up second chance romances like a cruise ship buffet. There's no stopping me when it comes to a second chance romance. It's one of my favorite tropes. This book follows Kaylee, who is a volleyball player, and she is anticipating her annual summer vacation that she spends with her family and her family friends. Only problem is that someone who attends this, one of her family friends, is someone she used to date named Dean. And now they're stuck on their family's annual vacation together. They have a set of rules about how they're gonna get over each other and how they're not gonna fall for one another, and obviously it's gonna backfire and they're gonna end up falling for one another again because it's a second chance romance, and I'm excited about it. The synopsis is clearly up my alley, but also the cover's fantastic. I thought this was an adult book, but I think it's marketed as YA because she's 17, so I think that's gonna be YA, but I guess we'll find out when I read it. And this book comes out on April 4th. Last year, Abby Jimenez took me by surprise with Part of Your World, so it only seems fitting that her April release, Yours Truly, makes this list. This is about a doctor named Brianna, I'm gonna call her Brianna, has a lot going on in both her personal and professional life, and she finds her coworker painfully aggravating. She can't stand him. Then Jacob, her coworker, sends her a letter, and upon reading this letter, she realizes that she may have had everything wrong about him. And I think this enemies to lovers is gonna work out fairly well to me, because I don't think it's fully enemies to lovers. Something I feel that enemies to lovers does wrong most of the time is that they just didn't really get to know each other, or they had a slight misunderstanding and then they absolutely hated each other's guts from that point on. And it doesn't really make sense, because I feel like a lot of adults, if they have these crazy unresolved points of tension with somebody else, they're likely going to address them, especially if it's in a workplace relationship. I feel like you're more frequently going to have a conversation about those things so it doesn't affect your workplace dynamic. But it makes sense that this all started with like a terrible first impression. Like, I can believe that, and then like him addressing it, it seems to make sense. It seems to fit the bill with what like a real adult would do, even though writing a letter, maybe not, but we're gonna go with it because it's Abby Jimenez and I trust her sometimes. Now, April 25th, I have to mention Emily Henry's Happy Place. This is one that I have read. I got very fortunate and got an arc of it. However, this is gonna end up on pretty much everyone's most anticipated list, so I figured I'd join the club. And also, I'm really anticipating my pre-order of it, so like, it counts, right? This is another forced proximity second chance romance following Harriet and Wynn. It's very similar to Never Vacation with Your Ex in that Harriet and Wynn are going on a vacation with their friends that they do every year, except their friends don't know that Harriet and Wynn have decided to end their engagement, and Harriet and Wynn are gonna pretend like their engagement hasn't ended just for the sake of this trip, and then at the end of the trip they're gonna tell their friends, hey, by the way, we're not together, so that they can have one last hurrah on their annual vacation. This was a 5-star read for me. It's got everything I like. It's got a second chance romance, it's got a good friend group, it's got a good foundation of like a reasonable romance, and It's exactly like Never a Vacation with Your Ex, which is one that I haven't read yet. So either I'm really predictable or I have refined my tastes so specifically that I just know exactly what I'm looking for. I'll leave you to decide which one that is. May 2nd has 2 titles that I'm really excited about. The first one being You Don't Have a Shot by Raquel Marie. Raquel Marie's debut novel, Ophelia After All, made it onto my best books of 2022. In fact, it was the best book of 2022. Spoiler alert if you haven't seen that video yet. So it only makes sense that I'm super excited for her next book. This book follows Valentina, who is in high school, and she is all about soccer. It's her life, it's her passion, it's her goal and every aspiration. Valentina and her rival end up getting into a fight, and this kind of throws all of her future plans into the unknown, as Elsa would say, leaves her kind of figuring out what she's gonna do. So as part of this resolution, she chooses to go to a soccer camp. Little do we know that her rival is co-captaining a soccer team at this thing that's going to be seen by college soccer recruit things. I don't know a lot about the whole recruitment process of soccer. I love soccer. I never got into it in like an actual career field or something I wanted to pursue beyond just recreational. So there's a lot of nuances here that I'm not super certain of, but I'm going to get behind it because it's Raquel Marie and I'm into it and I like soccer, so I trust it. It looks like it's going to be a cute sapphic romance, rivals to lovers. What more could a girl ask for? We have Imogen, obviously, by Becky Albertalli. This follows Imogen, obviously. And Imogen is a self-proclaimed raging heterosexual, which caught me by surprise when I was reading the synopsis. I loved it. She does have a lot of queer friends and considers herself a queer ally. And one of Imogen's friends, Lily, accidentally lets it slip that Imogen and Lily used to date, even though that never really happened. And none of Lily's friends know that Imogen is a self-proclaimed raging heterosexual, including Lily's friend Tessa. Imogen decides to go along with this lie, and as this ruse ensues, Imogen starts to realize that Tessa might be up her alley, and that this label of raging heterosexual that she's given herself may not be entirely accurate to her true identity and feelings. Much like Ophelia After All, it seems like this one's going to explore the idea of sexuality and the fluidity of that, and kind of getting to know yourself and your sexuality more, and flipping your idea of what you thought you were on your head. I mean, Ophelia After All started with a girl who was absolutely boy crazy, ending up realizing she had feelings for a girl and discovering her sexual identity in the process. It sounds like Imogen's a raging heterosexual who might have feelings for a girl. So am I just copying and pasting a lot of my favorite books in hopes that they're gonna work out the same as my favorite books? Yeah, I am doing that. And I hope it works out. The True Love Experiment by Christina Lauren comes out on May 16th, and I have this book on here despite having not even started Something Wilder, and I think it would be truly ironic if I finished this one before I even started Something Wilder. But this one follows The Soulmate Equation, which I read and I think I had like mediocre feelings about, but I think this is like a sequel to that, or follows a side character. Honestly, it's been a minute since I read The Soulmate Equation. It was ultimately pretty forgettable for me, so I don't really remember any of these characters. This follows romance novelist Fizzy. Are we seeing a little bit of self-insertion here, Christina Lauren? It's possible. I see y'all. Y'all ain't slick. Fizzy has never been in love, but constantly strives for those feelings that she writes about. Obviously, she's a romance writer. She loves the feeling of love, and she constantly wants to experience that someday. Connor is a filmmaker who is desperate to find a romantic lead for this reality TV series I believe he's working on. And so he recruits Fizzy. Fizzy ultimately agrees, and we're gonna see this contractual obligation of a relationship maybe melt into a real one. Connor is a single dad in this book, and I found that's something I've been really enjoying in my books lately. I love a single dad in a book. I think I have a thing for DILFs. We're not gonna talk about it. We're just gonna accept that for what it is and just like know it is fact, and we're gonna move on from that. I don't want to address it. I don't know why. I love a book with a DILF. Then I have 2 June releases that are gonna round out this list. The first being Going Bi-Coastal by Dahlia Adler. This follows Natalia, who basically has 24 hours to figure out what she's gonna do, where she wants to go with her life, and make big life decisions that are ultimately gonna impact her long term. Natalia can either stay with her dad and ultimately stay with this girl that she has a crush on, or she can go visit her mom, try and mend their broken relationship. It results in her being in 2 places on alternate timelines. I'm not exactly sure how this really works, but in one she's with her mom and one she's with her dad, and we're going to see those in dual timelines and how they're ultimately going to end up. I don't exactly know the intricacies of how this is going to work, so it's leaving a little something to be desired in terms of the synopsis, but I think that's a good thing because I don't exactly want to know everything, but it'll be interesting to see the perspective of how her life is going to be different contingent on each decision that she makes, and ultimately in one she has a girl that she likes and one that she has a boy that she likes. I believe this is going to end up in a bit of a love triangle, which never is something I'm super fond of, but Dahlia Adler loves a good love triangle, so hopefully this one works out for me. And the final book that I'm anticipating for the first half of this year is called Will They or Won't They by Ava Wilder, and this comes out on June 27th. This follows Lila and Shane, who are actors on a TV show, and their characters on said show are madly in love. Behind the scenes, these two are far from fond of one another. They actually hate each other. But in order to continue the success of the TV show and hopefully launch their careers, they obviously have to play the part and make their love story seem as irresistible on screen as it can possibly be, despite them hating each other in real life. I typically don't like books about famous people, but I read Ava Wilder's previous book that featured a famous actor, and I didn't hate how it was written about in there. Usually I'm not a big fan of famous people just because I find them super unrelatable and whatever, but it worked for me in the previous book, so I'm hoping that maybe it'll work here in this one too. So as they're striving to give their characters a happily ever after, I assume we're gonna see one turn up for them as well. Ultimately, I'm just holding out hope that it relies less on them as famous people and more so on them as a couple. So those are the books that I'm anticipating this year. There was what, 10 to 15 somewhere in there? I don't exactly know how many there were, but those are the books I'm really looking forward to for the first half of this year. Obviously, I'll come back and add some more towards the middle of the year that I'm looking forward to at the end of the year. These are ones that I'll be trying to pick up in the first few months. So thank you so much for watching this video. I hope you enjoyed. If you have any books that you're looking forward to this year, I'd love to hear them down below. Or if you have any recommendations for books you think I should be keeping an eye out for, I love to hear those as well. So thank you again for watching. I hope you all enjoyed, and I'll see you all in the next one. Happy reading!